Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and oftentimes you see people ask questions like, if you could only do a few exercises, how many would you do? And rather than look at that from, say, a bodybuilding perspective, let's look at that from a general development perspective and from an overall athleticism, size, strength, everything perspective, as far as just having a well-balanced musculature, well-balanced strength and performance. And I know that sometimes these sort of arguments are silly. They're fun to look at, though, sometimes when trying to create a minimalist type program for people who don't just have endless time to spend in the gym. They don't want to train 5 days a week, 6 days a week, an hour, 2 hours every single day. They oftentimes need to be more efficient in what they're doing, and or even people who compete in certain sports to where they can only dedicate so much time to actual resistance training because their sport specific demands require other training time, and they just don't have the time or the recovery ability to deal with a really long training routine. And I'm not saying that anyone, even in that, should limit themselves to just these exercises. What we need to keep in mind, there's always going to be some assistance exercise or some accessory exercise that you need personally to reach your goals or to balance something out, because 3 different people can run the exact same program with the same exercises and get a slightly different muscle balance. So sometimes there has to be some individual stuff thrown in. It's just the nature of training and the nature of individual adaptation, individual bone structures, things like that. And I'm not even prescribing at this point a training system. I'm just giving people exercises. These could be programmed into all sorts of different routines, using everything from block periodization to daily undulating periodization to just old school style training or even rest pause training. There's dozens of things you could do with these. So what would I consider to be the most important exercises if we wanted to limit it down to about 5 basic movements? All right, number 1 on the list is going to be a conventional deadlift. No single exercise has the potential to put as much size and overall full body strength on you as the deadlift. It literally works every stabilizer in the body, your core, everything from your spinal erectors to your lats and traps to some extent, even your lats to some extent, a little bicep, forearm, hamstrings, glutes, even some of your quad, hips, and calves to some extent. So this is an overall builder, and it has performance. It carries over into virtually any sort of contact sport, field sport. It is just an overall useful exercise. And again, the conventional deadlift is what I'm talking about, because when people try to jump over to a sumo deadlift, they're trimming out range of motion. They're taking certain muscles and removing them out of the equation more and adding others in more, things that could oftentimes be more better addressed with a squat. So I'm talking about the conventional deadlift, and actually in some cases we don't even need to do the standard conventional for everyone. Some people with slightly longer arms, different anatomies, could actually reach these same goals even more effectively off of, say, a deficit deadlift, or to rotate between the two. You don't have to stick to just one. And that's something that people need to keep in mind, that sometimes your individual needs or even stagnation with an exercise might require you to do a slightly different variation of that exercise from time to time, or to progress on it in different phases, just to keep things balanced out, to address your weak points. But the deficit deadlift for many people might actually be superior for overall strength and size, depending upon your individual structure, than doing just a standard one. The conventional deadlift overall, number 1 on the list. Number 2, I would go with a push press. Not just a strict press, but an actual push press, because there's so much data out there showing that in terms of just explosive leg drive, leg power, overall full body explosiveness, the push press even beats squats and deadlifts and things. And combine that with the fact that it is a tremendous upper body and shoulder girdle developer. You can build tremendously well-developed shoulders off of the push press, upper chest, triceps, in addition to it being an actual full body exercise. And actually the overhead press and push press has been found in some studies to actually engage the core even more than a squat or deadlift, including the abdominals. So it is a true full body exercise that helps build not only overall size and development in the upper body, particularly the shoulder girdle and triceps, but for just developing full body explosiveness and stability. It is a fantastic exercise. I mean, you combine that with a deadlift and you've now developed 90% of the muscles in your body. They might not be well balanced, but they're going to develop. And so what would I say behind that? Some sort of back squat. And I don't mean a low bar squat, not the power lifter squat, because I think the low bar is more specific to powerlifting. You get more range of motion and better athleticism and more real world applications from the high bar squat, oftentimes called an Olympic squat, but it's funny, non-Olympic lifters call it an Olympic squat, but Olympic lifters just call it a back squat. And again, we're talking about doing all these belt lifts so that you develop a strong core. These can all be done raw. And again, if you're doing all these exercises as raw as possible, you're going to end up with better overall development, and particularly more athleticism that's going to be more useful on any sort of playing field, contact sport, real world situations to go with all that hypertrophy that you're getting. Now, the other argument could definitely be made for a front squat instead of a back squat for this third exercise. Yes, we know that the back squat is going to be slightly superior to the front squat for thigh development. People who claim they're doing the front squat for their thighs, well, it's actually inferior to the regular high bar squat for quad development. But for core development, your upper back, thoracic erectors, even your abdominals, it is vastly superior. Plus the fact that it seems to carry over more than the back squat does to the first two exercises in here. And so since you're getting a massive amount of your development off of the push press and off of the conventional deadlift, the front squat seems to actually be a better accessory for those two exercises just slightly than the back squat does, mainly because of the extra thoracic development that it yields, and then the way that you tend to hold a front squat with that snatch grip, it tends to carry over very, very well to the push press. So they're exercises that are interchangeable in the sense of they help each other develop. And so your actual squat in that case might be better suited for many people because it's going to carry over to these other really important exercises better. You're going to get a better carryover and synergistic effect. So we could argue back and forth between the back squat and the front squat there, but one of the two would need to be in this mix. Up next, just because again, biceps and maybe lats and other things could get a little bit of underdevelopment as a result of not really having any real bicep work listed so far, chin-ups, and even more importantly, weighted chin-ups. And the reason I'm saying chin-ups instead of pull-ups, you're pulling the weight through a longer range of motion. And you're getting more bicep involved because the biceps have been neglected to some extent. They've had no direct work anywhere with these other three exercises that are listed, and the chin-up will alleviate that and allow someone to develop a large amount of bicep development also, which could be useful in many situations. And people who say you can't build big biceps off of chin-ups, well, you're probably just not doing enough of them or utilizing enough weight on them, or you're not doing full range of motion. Someone who can come in and do 100 body weight chin-ups every day, unless they have really, really tiny legs and don't weigh anything, the odds that they're going to have small biceps is pretty much non-existent. In fact, even someone who can just straight up do a 20 rep set, or they can even do 8 to 10 reps with 50% of their body weight added on, someone who's that strong on a chin up, it's just impossible for them to have small biceps. It's just not going to happen. In addition to the fact that it helps balance out a lot of those other muscles, it's going to help bring up rear delts, it's going to help bring up lats. In addition to the fact that it even helps with triceps to some extent. There is actually some stress, like stretch reflex stress, put up on the long head of the tricep, which is usually the most neglected head in the chin up. Is it going to make it grow much? Probably not, very little. But the thing that you need to remember when you're dealing with all these big compound movements, every single muscle that grows is a result of the synergistic effect of your full training. If you have 3 or 4 or 3 exercises that have at least some indirect different stresses on different small muscles, that muscle is going to develop from the cumulative stress. Even if that one exercise by itself isn't ideal for development, that combination is going to matter. So by doing that, you are getting some extra work on the long head of the tricep, and that push press is going to help that a lot. And the fact that the chin-up has been found to be a very strong abdominal exercise. Believe it or not, there's quite a bit of data out there showing that the actual chin-up, this is something lat pull-downs and other things don't do. Chin-ups actually work the core and the abdominals themselves very effectively, in addition to being an overall fantastic upper body exercise that hits at least half of the major muscles directly in the upper body, everything from grip strength to biceps to lats to rear delts to trapezius. It is actually a good core exercise also. In addition to the fact that just like every other exercise that we've had so far, moves the body through space. And I know that's a controversial topic, something I might discuss later with some of the Russians and their data over the years they came up with. Back in the day, the Russians had determined that it wasn't just tension that mattered, but your body's response itself to gravity. And exercises that move the body through space, Russian physiologists years ago, decades ago, found that they seem to give slightly better training results. Is it a big difference? No, it's a small difference. But if you're trying to be efficient, every little bit counts. And so the weighted chin-up, or just tons of body weight chin-ups with full range of motion, and again, chin-up with the underhand grip, is going to be high on this list because it's going to balance out a lot of muscles that haven't been hit yet. And what would I say the other thing you would want to do? Let's go with the same line of reasoning that we used with the chin up, that it is a body weight movement. The entire body is moving through space, then plus any additional weight you're adding on, just like all the other exercises here. The dip, and particularly weighted dips. And again, that's what's going to finish everything out. The weighted dip is going to go ahead and help develop the shoulders. Any further lagging in the front delts, side delts, things like that are going to get a little more training in the dip. But primarily, it's going to build the chest and triceps further. So between the other two exercises, once these dips are thrown in, your triceps are going to be fully developed. And again, I would point out people who say, well, it couldn't build that massive of triceps or chest. Again, use the same logic I just used on the chin up. Show me someone who does 100 dips every day who has a decent body weight because they actually train their legs, or who can do them with a fairly heavy weight added on for a decent number of reps. And you show me that person and they're not going to have an underdeveloped set of pecs or triceps as a general rule. So when you take these 5 basic exercises, they should really be the foundation of any program in which you're not concerned with competitive lifting, like Olympic lifting or powerlifting, to where you do a specific lift in competition, but you're just looking for overall size, strength, power, and athleticism. You're not going to go wrong with these 5 exercises. Does it mean that they're the only thing you should ever do? No. I would never say at any point that you should only limit yourself to 4, 5, or 6 exercises exclusively, because there's always going to be some weak points somewhere that you need to address for one reason or another. But if you use these 5 together as a primary focus of your training, and you progress and get stronger and stronger and stronger on these 5 exercises, you are going to be big, you are going to be strong, and you are going to have the strength that you need to help with overall athleticism. So these 5 are real winners when it comes down to it. They just may not be what you need for a specific weightlifting competitive environment. But overall development, strength, power, size, you can't go wrong with these 5 as your primary focus. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.